For 30 years, Maria Santos kept the biggest secret in sports history. Every morning at exactly 8 a.m., she watched Michael Jordan do something that would shock the world and change everything fans thought they knew about the basketball legend. It wasn't about practice shots or fitness routines. It wasn't about business meetings or endorsement deals. What Jordan did every single morning for 20 years was so unexpected, so moving, that when the truth finally came out, it left people crying tears of joy. The secret that would blow fans away had nothing to do with basketball. It was about the man behind the legend, and a daily ritual that proved Michael Jordan's greatest victories happened far from any basketball court. This is the story Maria Santos finally decided to tell. Maria Santos stared at her phone screen, her hands shaking slightly. The ESPN reporter's voice echoed in her Chicago apartment. "We'd love to interview you about your time as Michael Jordan's personal assistant. Our viewers would be fascinated to hear the real stories." She set the phone down without answering. Outside her window, the March 2024 snow fell softly on the quiet street. Maria pulled her grandmother's old shawl tighter around her shoulders. For 30 years, she had kept the secret. 30 years of watching the world think they knew Michael Jordan, when they didn't know him at all. The secret that would blow fans away wasn't about basketball. It wasn't about his famous temper, or his gambling, or his competitiveness. It was about what happened every single morning at exactly 8 a.m. for 15 years. Something so beautiful, so unexpected, that it would change how people saw the greatest basketball player who ever lived. Maria walked to her kitchen and made coffee the same way Abuela Rosa had taught her. Strong and black, with just a touch of cinnamon. The familiar ritual calmed her nerves as memories flooded back to that first day and night. She was 28 then, nervous and excited about working for the most famous athlete in Chicago, maybe in the world. Her hands had trembled that morning too, as she drove through the gates of Jordan's Highland Park mansion for the first time. The house was huge, bigger than anything Maria had ever seen growing up in Pilsen, the Mexican-American neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. Her parents had worked 3 jobs each, just to pay rent for their tiny apartment. Now she was walking through a mansion with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. David Falk, Jordan's manager, had been clear during her interview. Michael needs someone he can trust completely. Someone who will protect his privacy above all else. "Can you do that, Maria?" She had nodded, thinking she understood what that meant. Famous people needed privacy from fans and reporters. She could handle that. But she had no idea what she was really agreeing to keep secret. That first morning, Maria arrived at the mansion at 6 a.m. Her job was to organize Jordan's schedule, screen his phone calls, and handle his personal appointments. She had a key to the house and permission to work in his home office while the family was still sleeping. The house felt empty despite its size. Jordan's wife Juanita and their children were there, but the place seemed too big for any family. Maria tiptoed through the hallways, trying not to make noise on the polished floors. She set up her workstation in Jordan's office. The walls were covered with basketball trophies and pictures, but Maria noticed other photos too. Pictures of Jordan with his father, James Jordan Sr. Pictures of Jordan as a young boy in North Carolina before he was famous. In those old photos, he looked like any other kid from a working-class family. At exactly 7:45 a.m., Maria heard footsteps upstairs. Then the sound of a car starting in the driveway. She looked out the window and saw Jordan's black Mercedes pulling away from the house. This was strange. His first appointment wasn't until 10 a.m. Where was he going so early? Maria tried to focus on her work, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. When Jordan returned at exactly 9 a.m., he looked different. Calmer, somehow. More peaceful than she expected from someone who was famous for being intense and demanding. "Good morning, Maria," he said quietly. "How are you settling in?" His voice was gentle, not at all like the fierce competitor she had watched on television. He seemed genuinely interested in how she was doing, not just being polite. "Very well, Mr. Jordan. Thank you for asking." "Just call me Michael," he said, surprising her. "We're going to be working together closely. No need for formality." That first week, the same pattern repeated every day. Jordan would leave at 7:45 a.m. and return at exactly 9 a.m. He never explained where he went. Maria never asked. But she noticed that something about those morning trips seemed to change his whole mood for the day. On days when Jordan skipped his morning routine, usually when the Bulls had early practice or travel, he seemed more on edge. More like the Michael Jordan that reporters wrote about. Demanding, perfectionist, sometimes impatient with people around him. But on mornings when he took his mysterious trip, he was different. Patient with his children at breakfast, kinder to the household staff, even more focused during his basketball training later in the day. Maria was curious, but she had been raised to respect people's privacy. Abuela Rosa had always taught her that everyone deserves their secrets, especially when those secrets don't hurt anyone. 2 weeks into the job, Maria arrived early to organize some files. She was in the kitchen making coffee when she heard Jordan on the phone in his office. His voice carried through the quiet house. "I'll be there at 8, just like always," he was saying. "Tell Mrs. Washington I'm bringing extra supplies today, and ask Willie if he needs anything for the heating system." Maria didn't recognize the names Mrs. Washington or Willie. They weren't on any of Jordan's business contacts or personal friends lists that she managed. Who were these people that Michael Jordan called personally and seemed to care about so much? A few days later, Maria was organizing Jordan's personal expenses when she noticed something odd. There were regular payments to something called Southside Community Development. Large payments, thousands of dollars every month. But when she checked Jordan's public charity records, this organization wasn't listed anywhere. The mystery deepened when Maria found receipts for unusual purchases. School supplies, winter coats in children's sizes, books and backpacks, art supplies. None of these items ever appeared in the Jordan household. Where were they going? Maria's curiosity grew stronger each day. But every time she thought about asking Jordan directly, she remembered David Falk's words about protecting his privacy above all else. Then came the morning that changed everything she thought she knew about Michael Jordan. It was a cold November day in 1994. Maria arrived at work early to prepare for Jordan's busy schedule. The Bulls were in the middle of his comeback season, and the media attention was intense. Everyone wanted to interview the basketball legend who had returned from retirement. As Maria organized papers in Jordan's office, she heard his footsteps on the stairs. But instead of heading the kitchen for breakfast like usual, he walked straight to the front door. Maria glanced at the clock, 7:45 a.m. exactly. Through the office window, she watched Jordan walk to his car carrying a large bag she had never seen before. But as he got into the Mercedes, something made Maria's breath catch in her throat. There were tears in Michael Jordan's eyes. Not tears of sadness, but something else. Something that looked like joy mixed with determination. In that moment, Maria knew that whatever Michael Jordan did every morning at 8 a.m., it was the most important thing in his life. More important than basketball. More important than fame. More important than anything the world thought they knew about him. And as Jordan drove away into the Chicago morning, Maria Santos realized she was about to discover a secret that would change everything. 3 days before that first mysterious morning, Maria Santos had sat in the waiting room of Falk Associates Management Group in downtown Chicago. Her palms were sweating as she clutched her resume. The skyscraper office building made her feel small and out of place. Growing up in Pilsen, Maria never imagined she would be in a place like this. The neighborhood where she was raised was full of hard-working families who spoke Spanish at home and English at work. Her parents, Roberto and Carmen Santos, had come from Puerto Rico with nothing but hope and determination. Roberto worked the night shift at a steel factory and drove a taxi during the day. Carmen cleaned office buildings before dawn and worked at a grocery store in the afternoon. They slept only a few hours each night, but they never complained. Everything they did was for Maria and her younger brother Diego. Education is the only way out of poverty. Carmen always told her children in Spanish, "Study hard, mija. Make something of yourself." Maria had listened. She earned straight A's in high school, while working part-time at her uncle's restaurant. She learned to balance plates on her arms and take orders in 2 languages. The customers taught her that success meant treating everyone with respect, no matter who they were. DePaul University had seemed impossible at first, too expensive for a family that counted every penny. But Maria applied for every scholarship she could find. She wrote essays about growing up bilingual, about helping her neighbors fill out government forms, about organizing food drives at St. Alphonsus Church. The scholarships came through, Not enough to cover everything, but enough to make college possible with student loans and a work-study job. Maria studied business administration while working 20 hours a week in the university library. Her grandmother, Abuela Rosa, had been her biggest supporter. Rosa Santos was tiny but fierce, with silver hair and hands weathered from decades of hard work. She had raised 5 children while her husband worked construction jobs that took him away for months at a time. Mija, Abuela Rosa would say while making tortillas in her small kitchen. Rich people and poor people have the same hearts. They love their children and worry about their families just like we do. Remember that when you meet important people. Now, Maria was about to meet one of the most important people in Chicago. Her business degree had led to jobs with smaller companies. But nothing like this. When the headhunter called about a personal assistant position with a high-profile client, Maria never imagined it would be Michael Jordan. David Falk's office was bigger than Maria's childhood apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a view of Lake Michigan that took her breath away. Falk himself was younger than she expected, wearing an expensive suit and talking rapidly on 2 phones at once. "Maria Santos?" he said after finishing his calls. "Please, sit down. I've read your resume. Very impressive." Maria tried to hide her nervousness. She had practiced this interview with Diego the night before, but her brother couldn't prepare her for how intimidating this office felt. "Tell me about your background," Falk said, leaning back in his leather chair. Maria took a deep breath. "I grew up on the South Side, in Pilsen. My parents worked multiple jobs to support our family. They taught me that hard work and honesty matter more than anything else." She told Falk about organizing charity drives at church, helping elderly neighbors with paperwork, and translating for families who spoke only Spanish. She explained how she had managed the schedules for 3 different bosses at her previous job while keeping track of their personal appointments too. "This position requires absolute discretion," Falk said seriously. "Michael Jordan is not just an athlete. He's a global icon. Everything he does is news to someone. Can you handle that pressure?" "Yes, sir. I understand the importance of privacy." Falk studied her carefully. "Michael is complex. The public sees one side of him, the competitor, the perfectionist. But there are other sides too. This job will show you parts of his life that might surprise you." Maria nodded, though she didn't fully understand what he meant. "You'll be handling his personal schedule, screening calls, managing household staff, and dealing with family matters. Some days will be routine. Other days will be anything but routine." The salary Falk mentioned was more money than Maria had ever imagined earning. It would allow her to pay off her student loans, help her parents with their bills, and maybe even buy Abuela Rosa a new refrigerator to replace the one that barely worked. But something in Falk's tone suggested this job would be about more than just money. "Michael has been through a lot in the past year," Falk continued. "His father's death hit him harder than people realize. He's trying to figure out who he is beyond basketball. This job requires someone with empathy, not just efficiency." Maria thought about her own losses. Abuela Rosa had died just 6 months earlier, leaving a hole in Maria's heart that still ached. She understood grief and the way it could change a person. "I know what it's like to lose someone who means everything to you," Maria said quietly. "My grandmother raised me as much as my parents did. When she died, I felt lost for months." Falk's expression softened slightly. "That's exactly why I think you might be right for this position. Michael needs someone who understands that famous people hurt just like everyone else." The interview continued for another hour. Falk asked about Maria's organizational skills, her ability to work under pressure, and her experience with confidential information. But he kept coming back to questions about character and compassion. "If you saw Michael struggling with something personal, what would you do?" Falk asked. "I would respect his privacy, but let him know I'm available if he needs help. Sometimes people just need to know someone cares, even if they don't want to talk about it." Falk seemed satisfied with her answers. "There's one more thing," he said, opening his desk drawer. "This job has aspects that I can't explain fully right now. You'll understand more as time goes on." He handed Maria a sealed envelope with her name written on it in neat handwriting. "Don't open this until your 3rd day of work," Falk instructed. "It will help you understand the most important part of your responsibilities." Maria held the envelope carefully, curious about what it might contain. "Do you have any questions?" Falk asked. "Just one. Why me? I'm sure you could hire someone with more experience working for celebrities. Falk smiled for the first time during the interview. Michael doesn't need another person who sees him as a celebrity. He needs someone who will see him as a human being. Based on everything you've told me, I think you're that person. 2 hours later, Maria walked out of the building with a job offer and more questions than answers. She called her parents from a payphone, switching to Spanish to share the news. Mija, we're so proud of you, her mother said, crying with joy. That night, Maria sat in her small apartment holding the mysterious envelope. 3 days seemed like forever to wait. But she had learned patience from her grandmother, who always said that good things come to those who respect the process. As she fell asleep, Maria wondered what secrets she was about to discover about Michael Jordan. She had no idea that those secrets would change not just her understanding of fame, but her entire view of what it means to be successful. The envelope on her nightstand held the key to a story that would amaze the world, if anyone ever learned the truth. March 18, 1995. The entire city of Chicago felt electric. Maria Santos had been working for Michael Jordan for almost a year, and today the impossible was happening. The greatest basketball player in the world was coming back. I'm back. 2 simple words on a fax sent to reporters that morning had changed everything. After nearly 2 years away from basketball, after trying to play baseball, after the world wondering if he'd ever return, Michael Jordan was putting on the Bulls uniform again. Maria watched the news reports from Jordan's office, amazed by the chaos those 2 words had created. Phone calls flooded in from reporters, teammates, and fans. The stock market even went up because Jordan was returning to basketball. She had never seen anything like it. But behind all the excitement, Maria saw something else. The Michael Jordan she had gotten to know over the past year was different from the legend everyone was celebrating. Yes, he was competitive and demanding, just like the stories said, but she had also seen him struggle with pain that had nothing to do with basketball. The death of James Jordan Sr. in July 1993 had changed everything. Maria had learned this not from Jordan himself, but from watching him carefully during quiet moments. Sometimes she would find him staring at photographs of his father, his eyes filled with sadness. Other times she would catch him on late-night phone calls, talking softly about missing his dad's advice. Jordan's Highland Park mansion felt empty despite its size. His wife Juanita was there with their children, but the house seemed too big for any family to fill. Maria often worked late, and she noticed that Jordan had trouble sleeping. Sometimes she would see lights on in his home gym at midnight, hear the sound of basketballs bouncing as he shot alone in the dark. The media wrote stories about Jordan's gambling problems and his difficult personality. But Maria saw the truth. This was a man dealing with grief in the only ways he knew how. Basketball had been his escape from pain since childhood. When that wasn't enough anymore, he found other distractions. But there was something else too. Something that happened every morning at exactly 8 a.m. For 11 months now, Maria had watched the same routine. Jordan would wake up early, eat a quiet breakfast, and then drive away in his Mercedes. He always returned exactly 1 hour later, looking somehow different, calmer, more centered, like he had found something during that hour that helped him face the rest of the day. Maria had learned to schedule around this mysterious appointment. No meetings before 9:30 a.m. No phone calls during that sacred hour. Jordan never explained where he went, and Maria never asked, but she noticed that on the rare days when something prevented his morning trip, Jordan seemed more on edge throughout the day. The Bulls organization didn't know about Jordan's daily routine. Neither did his teammates or the media. This was something private, something that belonged only to Jordan. Today, with the announcement of his return, that privacy felt more precious than ever. News trucks lined the street outside the mansion. Helicopters circled overhead. Reporters called the house every few minutes, hoping to get Jordan on the phone. "Maria," Jordan said, finding her in his office around noon. "I need you to clear my schedule tomorrow morning until 9:30. The usual arrangement." Even on this historic day, even with the biggest sports story of the year swirling around him, Jordan's first priority was protecting his 8 a.m. ritual. "Of course, Michael," Maria replied. She had long ago stopped calling him Mr. Jordan. Over the months, they had developed a working relationship built on trust and mutual respect. Jordan sat down across from her desk, looking tired despite the excitement of the day. "This is going to get crazy." he said quietly. The attention, the pressure, the expectations. Everyone thinks they know why I'm coming back. Why are you coming back? Maria asked gently. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Basketball was my father's favorite thing to watch. He never missed my games when I was young. Even when I became famous, he was still just proud of his son playing the game he loved. Maria saw tears forming in Jordan's eyes as he continued. When I quit to play baseball, I thought I was honoring his memory. Dad always said I should try baseball if basketball didn't work out. But playing baseball felt like running away from who I really am. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the media circus surrounding his house. The truth is, I'm coming back because I finally understand something my father taught me. You can't run from your gifts. You have to use them to make a difference. Maria didn't fully understand what Jordan meant by that, but she heard the conviction in his voice. Over the next few weeks, as Jordan prepared for his return to the Bulls, Maria watched him transform. Morning trips continued, but now they seemed to energize him even more. He would come back from his 8 a.m. appointments, looking not just calm, but determined, like he had remembered something important about himself. The basketball world went crazy when Jordan returned to the court. His first game back against the Indiana Pacers was watched by millions of people around the globe. He scored 119 points and looked rusty. But it didn't matter. Michael Jordan was back. But Maria knew that the real story wasn't happening at the United Center. The real story was happening every morning at 8 a.m., somewhere in Chicago that only Jordan knew about. One morning in early April, Maria arrived at work to find Jordan sitting in his kitchen, staring at a Seatbelt article about his return. The headline read, "Jordan back for the money and glory." "They don't understand," he said without looking up. "They think this is about championships and endorsement deals." "What is it about?" Maria asked, pouring herself coffee. Jordan looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Not sadness or anger, but something deeper. Something that looked like purpose. "It's about using what you have to help others," he said simply. "My father taught me that success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about what you give back." Maria felt like Jordan was trying to tell her something important, but she didn't know what. 2 days later, she found out. Jordan left for his usual 8 a.m. appointment, but this time Maria noticed something different. As his Mercedes pulled out of the driveway, she saw that he wasn't alone. There was someone else in the car with him. Curious, Maria walked to the front window and watched Jordan's car turn onto Sheridan Road. For the first time in almost a year, she wondered if she should follow him. Not to spy, but to understand what was so important that it never changed, no matter what else was happening in Jordan's life. That afternoon, Jordan seemed different, more energetic than usual. During their daily schedule review, he kept glancing at his watch and smiling slightly. "Good day at your morning appointment?" Maria asked carefully. Jordan looked at her for a long moment, as if deciding whether to say something. Finally, he spoke. "Maria, have you ever wondered what the most important thing in life is?" "Family," she answered immediately, thinking of her parents and her late grandmother. "That's right," Jordan said. "But sometimes family isn't just the people you're born with. Sometimes it's the people you choose to take care of." Before Maria could ask what he meant, Jordan's phone rang. The conversation was over, but his words stayed with her all day. That night, Maria sat in her apartment holding the sealed envelope David Falk had given her almost a year ago. She had followed his instructions and never opened it, but now her curiosity was overwhelming. Tomorrow would mark exactly 1 year since she started working for Jordan. Maybe it was time to understand what she had really signed up for. As she fell asleep, Maria had no idea that the envelope contained an address and a key. An address on Chicago's South Side, not far from where she had grown up. A key to a building where Michael Jordan's real legacy was being built. One morning at a time, Maria's curiosity had been building for over a year, and finally she couldn't take it anymore. The next morning, she decided to follow Michael Jordan. She arrived at his Highland Park mansion at 7:30 a.m., parking her small Honda down the street where she could see his driveway, but stay hidden. Her heart pounded as she waited. What if Jordan saw her? What if she lost her job for spying on him? At exactly 7:45 a.m., Jordan's black Mercedes pulled out of his driveway. Maria waited a few seconds, then started her car and followed from a safe distance. She had grown up in Chicago and knew the streets well. But she was nervous about being spotted. Jordan drove south on Lakeshore Drive, then took the exit toward downtown. But instead of heading to the United Center or his office, he kept going south, into neighborhoods that Maria recognized from her childhood. They passed through the Loop, then into the South Side. These were the streets where Maria had walked to school as a little girl, where her parents still lived, where families worked hard just to pay rent and put food on the table. Jordan's Mercedes looked out of place here. Expensive cars like that usually meant trouble in this neighborhood, drug dealers or people who didn't belong. But Jordan seemed to know exactly where he was going. He parked outside a small brick building with a faded sign, Garfield Community Center. Maria had never heard of this place, but it looked like the kind of center she remembered from her childhood. A place where kids went after school when their parents were still at work. Maria parked across the street and watched Jordan get out of his car. He was carrying a large duffel bag that she had never seen before. But what surprised her most was the expression on his face. He looked happy, peaceful, not like the intense competitor the world knew, but like someone coming home. An older black man in a security uniform walked out to greet Jordan. They shook hands warmly, like old friends. Maria could see them talking and laughing together, but she was too far away to hear their conversation. After a few minutes, Maria gathered her courage and walked over to the security guard. The worst that could happen was that Jordan would fire her, but she needed to understand what was happening. "Excuse me," she said to the guard after Jordan had gone inside. "I'm Maria Santos. I work for Mr. Jordan." The man looked at her carefully. He was maybe 60 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. His name tag read Willie Johnson. "You're his assistant," Willie said, nodding. "Mike's told me about you. Says you're good people." Maria felt relief that Jordan had mentioned her, but also surprise. "He talks about me?" Willie chuckled. "Mike talks about everyone he cares about. That's just who he is. You want to know about his morning visits, don't you?" Maria nodded, feeling like a child who had been caught doing something wrong. Willie's expression grew serious. "Have a seat," he said, pointing to a bench outside the community center. "Let me tell you about this place." Maria sat down, grateful that Willie seemed willing to talk. "This center serves about 200 kids from the neighborhood," Willie began. "Ages 5 to 18. Most of them come from single-parent homes. Some live with grandparents, because their parents can't take care of them. Others are in foster care." Maria looked at the building with new understanding. It was small and plain, but she could see children's artwork taped to the windows. Hand-drawn pictures of families and homes and dreams. "These kids face challenges you can't imagine," Willie continued. "Violence in their neighborhoods. Not enough food at home. Parents working 3 jobs just to survive. Some of these children haven't had anyone believe in them their whole lives." "And Mr. Jordan comes here?" Maria asked. Willie smiled. "Started coming about 2 years ago, right after his daddy died. Mike was driving around the city one morning. Couldn't sleep, dealing with his grief. He saw kids walking to this center in worn-out shoes and thin coats, even in winter." Maria felt her throat tighten. She remembered walking to school in Chicago winters, her own thin coat not enough to keep out the cold. "Mike pulled over and came inside," Willie said. "Asked Mrs. Washington, she's the director, what the kids needed most. She told him the truth. They needed someone to believe they could succeed, even when everything in their world said they couldn't." "What did he do?" Maria whispered. "He started coming every morning at 8 o'clock. Not as Michael Jordan, the basketball star, just as Mike. Someone who wanted to help." Willie stood up and gestured toward the building. "These kids don't care about championships or endorsement deals. They care that someone shows up for them every single day. Someone who treats them like they matter." Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. "What does he do with them?" Willie's expression grew protective. "That's between Mike and those kids. But I will tell you this, he's not the same man when he leaves as when he arrives. Those children change him as much as he changes them." Maria sat in silence, trying to process what she was learning. The Michael Jordan she worked for was famous for being selfish and demanding. But this sounded like someone completely different. "Why doesn't anyone know about this?" she asked. "Because Mike doesn't want credit," Willie said simply. "He says charity should be about helping people, not getting praised." These kids need to know someone cares about them for who they are, not because it makes good publicity. A group of children walked by on their way into the center. They were young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, carrying backpacks that looked too big for their small bodies. One little girl was wearing shoes with holes in them, but she was smiling and laughing with her friends. Maria thought about her own childhood, how her parents had worked so hard to give her opportunities, how Abuela Rosa had always believed Maria could achieve anything if she tried hard enough. These children deserved that same belief, that same support. "Does he help them with schoolwork?" Maria asked. Willie nodded. "Every morning. Reading, math, whatever they need. Mike sits in those tiny chairs meant for kids, helps them with homework, listens to their problems." Maria tried to picture the 6'6" basketball legend folded into a child-sized chair, patiently helping with arithmetic. The image made her smile. "He pays for things too," Willie continued. "School supplies, winter coats, breakfast for kids who come to school hungry. Never wants recognition for it, just wants to make sure they have what they need." A car honked behind them, and Maria turned to see Jordan's Mercedes pulling away from the center. She checked her watch. Exactly 9 a.m. Just like always. Willie saw her looking. "Mike'll be back tomorrow at 8. Same as every day for the past 2 years. Rain or shine, win or lose, he shows up for these kids." Maria thanked Willie and walked back to her car, her mind spinning with what she had learned. As she drove back to Highland Park, she thought about Jordan's words from the day before. Sometimes family isn't just the people you're born with. Sometimes it's the people you choose to take care of. Now she understood. These children were Jordan's chosen family. The community center was where he went to remember who he really was beneath all the fame and pressure. When Maria arrived at the mansion, Jordan was already in his office, looking relaxed and focused. He glanced up when she walked in. "Good morning, Maria. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Yes," she said quietly. "It really is." Jordan studied her face for a moment, as if trying to read her thoughts. Then he smiled slightly and returned to his work. Maria sat at her desk and began organizing his schedule for the day. But her mind kept returning to the community center, to Willie's words, to the image of Michael Jordan helping children who needed someone to believe in them. That afternoon, as she was filing some papers, Jordan appeared in her doorway. "Maria," he said quietly, "would you like to come with me tomorrow morning? There's something I want you to see." Maria's hands trembled as she sat in her Honda Civic outside the Garfield Community Center. It was 7:55 a.m. on a cold November morning in 1995. Snow was beginning to fall, coating the south side streets in a thin layer of white. Jordan's Mercedes was already parked outside. Through the building's windows, Maria could see warm light glowing inside. Her heart pounded as she walked toward the entrance, not knowing what she was about to witness. Willie Johnson met her at the door with a knowing smile. "Ready to see what Mike's really about?" he asked quietly. Maria nodded, though she wasn't sure she was ready for anything. Jordan appeared in the hallway, carrying his usual duffel bag. When he saw Maria, his face lit up with genuine warmth. "I'm glad you decided to come," he said. "After working together for over a year, I thought it was time you understood why this hour is so important to me." As they walked down the corridor, Jordan began to explain. "After my father died, I felt completely lost. Basketball used to be enough to fill any emptiness inside me. But suddenly, it wasn't anymore." The hallway was lined with children's drawings taped to the walls. Pictures of families, houses with crooked chimneys, and rainbow-colored dreams. Maria noticed that many of the drawings showed only one parent, or children living with grandparents. "I started driving around Chicago at night, unable to sleep," Jordan continued. "I was angry and confused about Dad's death. Nothing made sense anymore." They approached a large room where Maria could hear the sound of children's voices and laughter. Jordan paused before opening the door. "One morning, I ended up in this neighborhood. I saw kids walking to this center wearing shoes with holes in them, thin coats that couldn't possibly keep them warm. It reminded me of stories my father used to tell about his childhood in North Carolina." Jordan's voice grew soft with emotion. "Dad always said that real strength isn't about beating other people. It's about lifting them up. I had forgotten that lesson until I found this place." He opened the door, and Maria's breath caught in her throat. The room was filled with about 30 children, ages 6 to 12, sitting at small tables eating breakfast. Their faces immediately brightened when they saw Jordan, but they didn't treat him like a celebrity. They treated him like family. "Mr. Mike," several voices called out at once. Children jumped up from their seats to hug Jordan around his waist. He knelt down to their eye level, asking each child about their homework, their families, and their week at school. "Did you practice your reading, Keisha?" he asked a 7-year-old girl with braided hair. "Yes, Mr. Mike. I read 3 whole pages last night." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." Maria watched in amazement. This gentle, patient man was nothing like the fierce competitor she saw on television. This was someone who genuinely loved these children. Mrs. Washington, the center's director, approached Maria with a warm smile. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. "You must be Maria," she said. "Michael talks about you often. He says you take good care of him." "He takes good care of everyone, it seems," Maria replied, still watching Jordan interact with the children. "These kids adore him," Mrs. Washington explained. "Not because he's famous, but because he shows up for them every single day. He remembers their names, their problems, their dreams." Jordan opened his duffel bag and began pulling out items. School supplies, winter coats in various sizes, new shoes and books. But Maria noticed something else: folders filled with what looked like homework assignments. "Michael helps them with their schoolwork every morning," Mrs. Washington said, following Maria's gaze. "He takes their homework home with him and brings it back corrected. He sits with them to explain math problems and helps them sound out difficult words." Maria felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched Jordan help a young boy named Marcus with his multiplication tables. The sight of this giant man folding himself into a tiny plastic chair, patiently explaining math to an 8-year-old, was more moving than any basketball game she had ever watched. "I don't understand," she whispered to Mrs. Washington. "Why doesn't anyone know about this?" "Because Michael insists on keeping it private. He says these children shouldn't be used as props for good publicity. They deserve to be helped simply because they're valuable human beings." A little girl with pigtails ran up to Jordan, holding a piece of paper. "Mr. Mike, I wrote you a letter." Jordan accepted the paper with the same seriousness he might show a business contract. He read it carefully, then smiled widely. "This is beautiful, Sophia. Your handwriting is getting so much better. Can you read it to me?" Sophia beamed as she read her letter aloud. "Dear Mr. Mike, thank you for helping me with my spelling test. I got all the words right. My grandma says you are an angel. Love, Sophia." Maria had to wipe her eyes as Jordan hugged the little girl. "You're the angel, Sophia. You make me proud every day." Mrs. Washington guided Maria to a quiet corner of the room. "These children have faced things no child should face. Some have parents in prison. Others live in foster homes because their families can't take care of them. A few have lost parents to violence or drugs." Maria looked around the room with new understanding. These weren't just kids getting help with homework. These were children who had been dealt terrible hands in life, but were still fighting to succeed. "What Michael gives them isn't just tutoring," Mrs. Washington continued. "It's hope. It's the belief that someone important thinks they're worth investing in." Jordan clapped his hands to get the children's attention. "Okay, everyone, time to head to school. Remember what we talked about yesterday? Work hard, be kind, and never give up." The children chanted in unison. As the children gathered their backpacks and headed toward the door, many of them stopped to hug Jordan goodbye. Each hug seemed to energize him more. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Mike," they called out as they left for school. When the room was quiet, Jordan sat down across from Maria. His eyes were bright with an emotion she had never seen before. Pure joy. "Do you understand now?" he asked softly. Maria nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Finally, she found her voice. "This is why you seem different after your morning visits. This is where you remember who you really are." Jordan smiled. "My father taught me that success without service is meaningless. These kids remind me every day that I have more to offer the world than just basketball." Mrs. Washington joined them at the table. "Michael, should I show Maria the special room?" Jordan glanced at Maria, then nodded. "Yes, I think she's ready." They walked to a door at the back of the main room. Jordan opened it slowly, and Maria gasped at what she saw inside. The walls were covered with hundreds of letters. Letters written by children in careful, sometimes shaky handwriting. Letters addressed to parents, grandparents, siblings, and friends. Some were addressed to people who had died. Others were meant for family members they couldn't see regularly. "This is our letter writing room," Jordan explained quietly. "Some of these children can't visit their parents. Others have lost family members and need a way to express their feelings." Maria read some of the letters posted on the walls, tears streaming down her face. "Dear Mama, I hope you get better in the hospital soon. I'm being good for Grandma. I love you, Deshaun. Dear Daddy in heaven, I made honor roll this semester. I wish you could see my report card. Your daughter, Tiffany. Dear Mom, I know you're working 2 jobs to take care of me and my little brother. I'm going to study hard and make you proud. Love, Anthony." Jordan sat at one of the small desks, looking impossibly large in the child-sized chair. "After my father died, I realized I had never written him enough letters while he was alive. I never told him often enough how much he meant to me." He picked up a pencil and a piece of paper. "So I started this program. Every morning, I help the children write letters to the people they love. Sometimes we mail them. Sometimes we keep them here. But always, the children get to express what's in their hearts." Maria watched Jordan help a young boy named Jamal with his letter. Jamal was writing to his mother who had died in a car accident 6 months earlier. "Dear Mama," Jordan helped him spell, "I miss you every day. But Mr. Mike says you're watching me from heaven and that you're proud of me for trying hard in school." Jordan's voice was gentle as he guided Jamal through the difficult words. Maria could see tears in Jordan's eyes as he worked with the boy. "This is incredible," Maria whispered to Mrs. Washington. "How long has he been doing this?" 2 years now. Rain or shine, win or lose, Michael Jordan is here at 8 a.m., helping children believe in themselves." As they prepared to leave, Maria felt like she was seeing Michael Jordan clearly for the first time. This wasn't just a basketball player doing charity work. This was a man who had found his true purpose in life. Walking back to their cars, Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Maria, I need to ask you something important. Can I trust you to keep this private?" "Of course," Maria said immediately. "But Michael, why? The world would be amazed by what you're doing here." Jordan stopped walking and looked directly at her. "Because the moment this becomes a media story, it stops being about the children. It becomes about me. And that's not what these kids need." Maria understood. Jordan's greatest gift to these children wasn't his money or his fame. It was his genuine care and his consistent presence in their lives. "There's something else I want to show you," Jordan said as they reached their cars. "But not today. Tomorrow, I want you to meet someone who will help you understand why this work has become the most important thing I do." The next morning, Maria arrived at the Garfield Community Center with her heart racing. She had barely slept, thinking about everything she had witnessed the day before. The image of Michael Jordan folded into that tiny chair, patiently helping children with their homework, kept playing in her mind. Jordan was already inside when she arrived. Through the window, she could see him kneeling next to a small girl, helping her tie her shoes. The sight made Maria smile. This was a side of the basketball legend that the world would never believe existed. "Good morning, Maria," Willie Johnson said as she approached the entrance. "Mike's been looking forward to showing you more today." Inside the main room, the usual morning routine was in full swing. Children were eating breakfast, working on homework, and chattering excitedly about their day ahead. But Maria noticed something different today. Several older teenagers were also in the room, helping the younger children with their reading. Jordan looked up when Maria entered and waved her over to where he was sitting with a boy who looked about 16. "Maria, I want you to meet Anthony Rodriguez," Jordan said with obvious pride in his voice. "Anthony graduated from our program 3 years ago. Now he's a senior in high school and comes back every morning to help the younger kids." Anthony stood up and shook Maria's hand politely. He was tall and thin, with intelligent eyes and a warm smile. "Mr. Mike changed my life," Anthony said simply. "When I was 8 years old, I thought I was stupid. I couldn't read well, and my teachers seemed to give up on me. Then I started coming here, and Mr. Mike spent hours teaching me letters and sounds." Jordan looked embarrassed by the praise. "Anthony did all the hard work. I just sat with him." "You did more than that," Anthony replied firmly. You believed in me when no one else did. You showed me that being poor doesn't mean you can't be smart." Maria felt her throat tighten as she listened to this exchange. Anthony's respect and love for Jordan was obvious, but so was Jordan's genuine pride in the young man's achievements. Mrs. Washington approached them with a thick folder in her hands. "Maria, I thought you might like see some of the success stories from our program." She opened the folder to reveal dozens of photographs and letters, pictures of teenagers in graduation caps and gowns, thank you notes written in careful handwriting, college acceptance letters and scholarship awards. "This is Keisha Williams," Mrs. Washington said, pointing to a photo of a young woman in a nursing uniform. "She started coming here when she was 7. Michael helped her with reading every morning for 5 years. Now she's a registered nurse at Chicago General Hospital." She flipped to another page. "And this is Deshaun Thompson. He struggled with math until Michael started working with him. Now he owns his own auto repair shop and employs 6 people from the neighborhood." Maria stared at the photos, amazed. "How many children have graduated from the program?" "Over the past 8 years, we've had 237 children complete our program," Mrs. Washington said proudly. 85% have graduated from high school. 42 have gone to college. 16 have started their own businesses. Jordan was quiet as Mrs. Washington shared these statistics. Maria could see that while he was proud of the children's success, he didn't want to take credit for their achievements. "The kids did all the real work," Jordan said softly. "They're the ones who studied hard and never gave up on their dreams." "But you gave them something just as important," Anthony interjected. "You gave them hope. You showed them that someone successful believed they could succeed too." Mrs. Washington led Maria to a bulletin board covered with more recent photos. "These are some of our current college students. Michael has quietly paid for their tuition, books, and living expenses." Maria's eyes widened. "He pays for college, full scholarships," Mrs. Washington confirmed. "But the students don't know the money comes from Michael. They think it's from a general scholarship fund. He insists on staying anonymous." Jordan looked uncomfortable with this revelation. "They earned those scholarships with their hard work and good grades. The money is just removing a barrier that shouldn't exist." A young woman approached them, carrying a small child on her hip. She looked to be about 22 years old, with tired eyes but a bright smile. "Mr. Mike," she called out. "I was hoping to catch you this morning." Jordan's face lit up. "Tiffany, how's nursing school going?" "Great, I just finished my clinical rotation in pediatrics. I love working with children." She shifted the toddler to her other hip. "And this is my daughter, Maya." "Maya, can you say hi to Mr. Mike?" The little girl buried her face in her mother's shoulder, then peeked out to smile at Jordan. Jordan's expression was pure joy as he gently tickled Maya's chin. "She's beautiful, Tiffany." Just like her mama, Tiffany's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Mike, I don't know how to thank you for everything. The tutoring when I was little, the scholarship money, the letter of recommendation for nursing school. You saved my life." "You saved your own life," Jordan replied gently. "You made the choice to study hard and follow your dreams. I just helped with some of the obstacles." After Tiffany left, Mrs. Washington pulled Maria aside. "That young woman was living in 3 different foster homes before she found us. She was angry behind in school and convinced she would never amount to anything." Maria watched Tiffany through the window as she walked toward the bus stop with her daughter. "What changed?" "Michael did what he always does. He saw potential where others saw problems. He spent extra time with her, helped her catch up in reading and math, and most importantly, he convinced her that she was smart and capable." They walked back toward the letter writing room, where Jordan was helping several children with their morning writing exercise. "The letter project is really the heart of everything Michael does here," Mrs. Washington explained quietly. "Many of these children carry so much pain and sadness. Writing letters helps them express their feelings in healthy ways." Maria watched Jordan sit with a 9-year-old boy named Carlos, who was writing a letter to his father in prison. "Dear Daddy," Carlos read aloud as Jordan helped him with the spelling. "I hope you are staying safe. I'm doing good in school. Mr. Mike helps me with my math every day. I can't wait for you to come home." Jordan's voice was gentle as he guided Carlos through the difficult emotions in his letter. "It's okay to miss your daddy, Carlos. And it's okay to feel sad sometimes. But remember what we talked about. You're not responsible for adult problems. I know, Mr. Mike, you always tell us that kids should focus on being kids. Maria felt tears in her eyes as she watched this interaction. Jordan wasn't just helping with spelling and grammar. He was providing emotional support and guidance that many of these children weren't getting anywhere else. A 10-year-old girl named Isabella was writing a letter to her grandmother who had died the year before. Jordan knelt beside her chair, his massive frame looking almost comical next to the tiny furniture. "Dear Abuela," Isabella wrote with Jordan's help. "I got an A on my science test. I know you would be proud of me. I miss our Sunday dinners and the stories you used to tell me. I love you forever." Jordan helped Isabella fold the letter carefully. "Would you like to put this in our special memory box with your other letters to Abuela?" Isabella nodded, wiping her eyes. Jordan gave her a gentle hug before she walked to a decorated box in the corner of the room. "The memory box is for letters to people who have died," Mrs. Washington explained to Maria. "It gives the children a physical place to put their feelings and memories." Maria thought about her own grandmother, and how much she would have appreciated having a place like this to process her grief when Abuela Rosa died. Jordan approached them, looking emotionally drained but peaceful. "This is why I do this work, Maria. These children face challenges that would break most adults. But they keep fighting, keep believing, keep hoping for better days." He gestured around the room, where children were carefully placing their finished letters in envelopes or in the memory box. "Every letter they write is an act of courage. Every morning they show up here as a choice to keep trying. They inspire me more than I could ever inspire them." Maria understood now why Jordan seemed different after his morning visits to the center. These children didn't just receive his help, they gave him something profound in return. They reminded him daily about the power of perseverance and the importance of hope. As the children prepared to leave for school, Jordan made his usual rounds, saying goodbye to each one individually. But today, Maria noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. Several children handed Jordan letters that weren't addressed to family members. They were addressed to him. "Don't read them until tonight," 8-year-old Sophia whispered as she pressed her letter into Jordan's hand. Jordan accepted each letter with the same seriousness he might show an important business document. Maria could see that these letters meant everything to him. "What do the children write to you about?" Maria asked as they prepared to leave. Jordan smiled softly. "They tell me about their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. They share things with me that they can't tell anyone else." He paused at the door, looking back at the room where so many important conversations had taken place. "Maria, there's one more thing I need to show you tomorrow. Something that will help you understand why this work isn't just important to me. It's become essential to who I am." As they walked to their cars, Maria realized that Michael Jordan's greatest victories weren't happening on basketball courts. They were happening every morning in a small community center. One letter at a time. Maria arrived at the community center the next morning to find Mrs. Washington waiting for her with a serious expression. Jordan's Mercedes wasn't in the parking lot yet, which was unusual. He was never late for his 8 a.m. appointment with the children. "Is everything okay?" Maria asked, worried that something had happened to Jordan. "Michael's fine," Mrs. Washington said quickly. "But he got a phone call last night that changed our plans for this morning. He wants to meet you in my office before the children arrive." Mrs. Washington led Maria through the community center to a small office at the back of the building. The walls were covered with graduation photos, thank you letters, and certificates of achievement. But what caught Maria's attention were the file cabinets. Dozens of them, all labeled with year. Jordan was sitting at Mrs. Washington's desk, looking more serious than Maria had ever seen him. In front of him were stacks of documents, photographs, and letters. "Good morning, Maria," he said quietly. "I need to show you something that I've never shown anyone outside of this building." Mrs. Washington locked the office door behind them. "What you're about to see," she said to Maria, "represents 15 years of Michael's life. 15 years of children who needed someone to believe in them." Jordan gestured to the file cabinets. "Every child who has ever come through our program has a file, not just while they're here but for the rest of their lives." He opened the nearest cabinet and pulled out a thick folder labeled Class of 2. Inside were dozens of individual files, each one containing school records, photographs, college applications, and personal letters. "This is Keisha Williams," Jordan said, opening one file. "You met her yesterday through her graduation photo, but this shows her whole journey." Maria looked at the documents with amazement. Keisha's file began when she was 7 years old. With a note from her first-grade teacher, Keisha is behind in reading and seems to have given up trying. But as Maria flipped through the pages, she saw the transformation. Report cards showing steady improvement. A photo of 8-year-old Keisha proudly holding up a book she had read cover to cover. Her high school diploma, her nursing school acceptance letter, her first job offer. I've been tracking every child's progress for 15 years, Jordan explained. Not because I want to take credit for their success, but because I want to make sure they never fall through the cracks. Mrs. Washington opened another cabinet. These files contain something that would shock the world, she said. Michael hasn't just been helping children with homework and breakfast. He's been paying for their entire education from elementary school through college. Maria felt her jaw drop. All of them? Every single child who shows commitment to their education, Jordan confirmed. School supplies, winter clothes, medical care when their families can't afford it, and full college scholarships for those who qualify. Jordan pulled out a calculator and a ledger book. In 15 years, I've invested over $12 million in these children's futures, but I've never told anyone that number before today. Maria stared at him in disbelief. $12 million. The media had always criticized Jordan for not being charitable enough, not giving back to his community. If they only knew the truth. But why keep it secret? Maria asked. The world would be amazed by your generosity. Jordan's expression grew firm. Because the moment this becomes a news story, it stops being about helping children and starts being about making me look good. These kids need to believe they earned their success, not that they were handed charity. Mrs. Washington pulled out another file, this one much thicker than the others. The label read Anthony Rodriguez, class of... Anthony is our greatest success story, she said, opening the file. But also our biggest challenge. Maria remembered meeting Anthony the day before. The polite, intelligent young man who now mentored younger children. His file told a different story of where he had started. The first document was a police report from when Anthony was 9 years old. He had been caught stealing food from a grocery store because his family didn't have money for meals. There were school reports describing him as aggressive, unable to focus, and unlikely to succeed. But as Maria read further, she saw how everything changed after Anthony started coming to the community center. Michael spent extra time with Anthony every single morning, Mrs. Washington explained. Sometimes 2 hours instead of 1. He helped Anthony with anger management, taught him coping strategies, and most importantly, showed him that his difficult circumstances didn't define his future. Jordan was quiet as Mrs. Washington shared Anthony's story. Maria could see the emotion in his eyes as he looked at the photographs showing Anthony's transformation from an angry, scared child to a confident young man. Anthony is now a senior at the University of Illinois, studying engineering. Jordan said proudly, he's going to graduate in May with a 3.8 grade point average. But more importantly, he comes back here every morning to help other children who remind him of himself. The cycle continues, Mrs. Washington added. Children we helped 10 years ago are now helping today's children. They're becoming teachers, social workers, nurses, and business owners who give back to their communities. Jordan opened another file cabinet, this one labeled Current Students. Inside were files for the 30 children Maria had met over the past few days. Sophia Martinez, Jordan said, pulling out a file. The little girl you saw yesterday who wrote me a letter. She lives with her grandmother because her parents are battling drug addiction. But she's reading at a 4th grade level even though she's only in 2nd grade. Maria looked at Sophia's file, which contained not only school records but also photos of her family, notes about her grandmother's health problems, and a schedule of tutoring sessions Jordan had arranged. Carlos Thompson, Jordan continued, opening another file. The boy writing letters to his father in prison. Carlos was having nightmares and behavioral problems at school. But since we started the letter writing program, his teacher says he's like a different child. Each file told a story of a child facing enormous challenges, but finding hope and support through Jordan's program. Maria realized that Jordan didn't just know these children's names. He knew their families, their struggles, their dreams, and their fears. Michael attends every graduation, every school play, every important event in these children's lives, Mrs. Washington said. He's not just a tutor or a donor, he's family to them. Jordan pulled out a leather-bound book from his desk drawer. "This is my personal journal," he said. "I write about each child's progress, their challenges, and my hopes for their futures." He opened the journal to a recent entry and read aloud, "Sophia told me today that she wants to become a teacher so she can help other children learn to read." The pride in her voice reminded me why this work matters more than any basketball game ever could. Maria felt tears in her eyes as she listened to Jordan read from his journal. Each entry showed how deeply he cared about these children and how much their success meant to him. "There's something else," Mrs. Washington said, walking to a locked file cabinet in the corner. "Something that even most of our staff doesn't know about." She opened the cabinet to reveal files labeled with addresses throughout Chicago. "Michael doesn't just work with children here at the center. He's established smaller programs in 12 different neighborhoods across the city." Jordan looked embarrassed as Mrs. Washington revealed this information. "Some children can't get to the center every morning, so I started bringing the program to them." Maria stared at the files, overwhelmed by the scope of Jordan's commitment. "How do you manage all of this?" "I visit each location once a week," Jordan explained. "Local volunteers run the daily programs, but I make sure every child gets individual attention and support." Mrs. Washington pulled out a map of Chicago with red pins marking each program location. "Over 500 children are currently enrolled across all our sites. Michael knows every single child's name and story." 500 children, Maria whispered, hardly believing what she was hearing. Jordan's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. He answered it, and Maria watched his expression change dramatically. "What?" he said urgently. "When did this happen? Is he okay?" He hung up and turned to Maria and Mrs. Washington with fear in his eyes. "That was the hospital," he said, his voice shaking. "Anthony Rodriguez was shot last night in a drive-by shooting. He's in critical condition." The room fell silent as the weight of Jordan's words sank in. Anthony, the young man who had overcome so much and was weeks away from graduating college, was fighting for his life. "We need to get to the hospital," Jordan said, already reaching for his car keys. "Anthony's grandmother is there alone, and she's going to need support." As they rushed toward the door, Maria realized that this crisis would show her the true depth of Jordan's commitment to his children. These weren't just statistics or success stories to him, they were family members whose pain became his pain. "Maria," Jordan said as they reached their cars, "I need you to understand something. What we do next, how we support Anthony and his family. This is the most important work I'll ever do. More important than any championship or record or anything else the world thinks defines me." The drive to Chicago General Hospital felt like the longest 20 minutes of Maria's life. She followed Jordan's Mercedes through the busy Chicago streets, watching him talk urgently on his car phone through his back window. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders. At the hospital, Jordan didn't act like a celebrity. He didn't ask for special treatment or try to avoid the crowded emergency room. He walked straight to the information desk, like any other worried family member. "I'm here about Anthony Rodriguez," he said quietly to the nurse. "He was brought in last night with gunshot wounds." The nurse looked up at Jordan with recognition, but her expression remained professional. "Are you family?" "Yes," Jordan said without hesitation. "I'm his." He paused, searching for the right words. "I'm like his father." The nurse gave them directions to the intensive care unit on the 4th floor. As they rode the elevator in silence, Maria watched Jordan's hands shake slightly. She had seen him handle the pressure of championship games with ice-cold calm. But this was different. This was personal in a way that basketball never could be. In the ICU waiting room, they found Anthony's grandmother, Mrs. Elena Rodriguez. She was a small woman in her 70s, sitting alone in a plastic chair with tears streaming down her face. When she saw Jordan, she stood up and fell into his arms. "Mijo," she sobbed in Spanish. "They shot my baby. He was just walking home from his job at the engineering firm." Wrong place, wrong time. Jordan held Mrs. Rodriguez like she was his own mother, speaking softly in the broken Spanish he had learned from years of working with Hispanic children at the center. "He's gonna be okay, Abuela," Jordan said, using the grandmother title that all the neighborhood children used for her. "Anthony is strong. He's a fighter." Maria sat quietly in the corner, watching Jordan comfort the elderly woman. She understood now what Mrs. Washington had meant about Jordan becoming family to these children and their relatives. This wasn't charity work or community service. This was a man supporting his chosen family in their darkest hour. Dr. Patricia Williams, the surgeon treating Anthony, came to speak with them around noon. Maria noticed that Dr. Williams looked familiar, but she couldn't place where she had seen her before. The surgery went well, Dr. Williams told them. Anthony was shot twice, once in the shoulder and once in the abdomen. We were able to remove both bullets, and there doesn't appear to be any permanent damage to vital organs. Jordan exhaled deeply, the first time Maria had seen him relax since getting the phone call. "When can we see him?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked. "He's still unconscious from the anesthesia, but you can sit with him in about an hour," Dr. Williams replied. Then she looked directly at Jordan. "Mr. Mike, I wanted to thank you personally. If Anthony hadn't been in such good physical shape and such good spirits lately, this could have been much worse." Maria realized why Dr. Williams looked familiar. She was one of Jordan's success stories from years earlier, probably one of the children whose college education he had funded. "You were in the program too," Maria said quietly. Dr. Williams smiled. 15 years ago, I was an angry 12-year-old who thought the world was against me. Mr. Mike helped me see that I could become anything I wanted to be, including a doctor." Jordan looked embarrassed by the attention. "Patricia did all the hard work. She earned her success. But you made it possible," Dr. Williams insisted. "You paid for my medical school tuition, wrote my recommendation letters, and believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." As Dr. Williams returned to her duties, Maria marveled at the incredible circle of support Jordan had created. Children he had helped years ago were now in positions to help the current generation. They spent the next 18 hours at the hospital. Jordan never left, even when Bulls practice was scheduled or when reporters called looking for interviews. He sat in the uncomfortable waiting room chairs holding Miss Rodriguez's hand and making phone calls to arrange for Anthony's medical expenses. "I don't want Elena to worry about hospital bills," Jordan told Maria quietly. "She's raised Anthony on her own since he was 3 years old. She's done enough." When Anthony finally woke up that evening, the first person he asked for was Jordan. "Mr. Mike," he whispered weakly, "I knew you'd be here." Jordan pulled a chair close to Anthony's hospital bed and took his hand. "I'll always be here for you, son. Always." "I was so scared," Anthony admitted. "I thought I might not make it to graduation." "You're gonna graduate," Jordan said firmly. "In 6 weeks, I'm gonna watch you walk across that stage and get your engineering degree. Nothing is gonna stop that from happening." Maria watched this interaction from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. The love between Jordan and Anthony was as real and deep as any father-son relationship she had ever witnessed. Over the next 3 days, Jordan visited Anthony every morning before going to the community center. He brought homework from Anthony's college classes, helped him stay caught up with his studies, and most importantly, made sure Anthony didn't lose hope. "The doctors say I'll have full recovery," Anthony told Jordan on the 3rd day. "But Mr. Mike, what if this happens to other kids in the program? What if someone else gets hurt because of the violence in our neighborhoods?" Jordan was quiet for a long moment. "That's exactly why we do this work, Anthony. We can't eliminate all the dangers, but we can give children hope and education and opportunities. We can show them there's a way out." "But what if it's not enough?" Anthony asked. "Then we work harder," Jordan replied simply. "We help more children. We create more programs. We never give up." Maria realized that this crisis had only strengthened Jordan's commitment to his work. Instead of becoming discouraged by the violence that had nearly taken Anthony's life, Jordan was more determined than ever to expand his programs. On the 4th day, Anthony was moved out of intensive care. Jordan brought a special visitor, Sophia Martinez, the 8-year-old girl who had written Jordan a letter about wanting to become a teacher. "Mr. Anthony," Sophia said shyly, "I made you a card." Anthony accepted the handmade card with tears in his eyes. It was decorated with crayons and stickers, and inside Sophia had written, "Get better soon. We need you to help us with math." "I'll be back at the center next week," Anthony promised her. "And I'll help you with whatever you need." Watching this interaction between Anthony and Sophia, Maria understood something profound. Jordan hadn't just saved individual children. He had created a family that supported each other through good times and bad. The Chicago Bulls organization didn't understand why Jordan seemed distracted during this time. His teammates noticed he was different in practice. Sports reporters speculated about what was affecting his performance on the court, but Maria knew the truth. Jordan's mind was on Anthony's recovery and on the safety of all the other children who walked through dangerous neighborhoods to get to school each day. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough," Jordan confided to Maria one evening as they sat in Anthony's hospital room. "These kids face challenges I never had to deal with growing up." "You're doing more than enough," Maria replied. "You're doing everything one person can do." Jordan shook his head. "But one person shouldn't have to do everything. There should be more programs like ours. More people willing to invest in these children's futures." Maria heard something different in Jordan's voice. Not discouragement, but determination to think bigger. 2 weeks later, Anthony was released from the hospital. Jordan was there to drive him home, and Maria noticed as dozens of children from the community center lined up outside to welcome Anthony back. "We missed you, Mr. Anthony," they called out as he slowly walked toward the building. Anthony hugged each child carefully, his shoulders still healing but his spirit completely restored. That afternoon, as Anthony sat with the children helping them with their homework, Jordan pulled Maria aside. "I've been thinking about what Anthony said in the hospital. About whether we're doing enough. I think it's time to make this work bigger than just Chicago." "What do you mean?" Maria asked. Jordan looked at her with an expression of complete determination. "I want to create programs like this in every major city in America. I want to make sure that children like Anthony have support no matter where they live." "That would be an enormous undertaking," Maria said. "Then we better get started," Jordan replied. "Because after almost losing Anthony, I've realized something important. This work isn't just what I do in my spare time. This is my life's purpose." As they watched Anthony help young Sophia with her reading, Maria knew that Jordan's near loss of one of his children had only made him more committed to helping thousands more. May 15, 1998. 3 years had passed since Anthony Rodriguez was shot. Today was the day Jordan had promised would come. Anthony was graduating from the University of Illinois with his engineering degree, and Jordan sat in the packed auditorium wearing dark sunglasses and a Chicago Bulls baseball cap, trying to stay invisible. Maria sat beside him, watching Jordan's face as the ceremony began. His hands were folded tightly in his lap, and she could see the pride radiating from him. For Jordan, this graduation represented more than just one young man's success. It was proof that his 15 years of work was making a real difference. The auditorium was filled with thousands of families celebrating their children's achievements. But Maria knew that for Jordan, there was only one graduate who mattered today: Anthony Rodriguez. The angry 9-year-old who had once stolen food to survive was about to become a college-educated engineer. "I can't believe we're really here," Jordan whispered to Maria as the graduates filed into the auditorium in their caps and gowns. Jordan had attended 47 graduations over the years: high school ceremonies, college graduations, and even some graduate school events. But Anthony's graduation felt different. Anthony had survived being shot, had overcome poverty and family trauma, and had maintained a 3.8 grade point average through it all. Mrs. Rodriguez sat in the row behind them, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. At 76 years old, she had raised Anthony alone after his parents couldn't care for him. She had worked 2 jobs her entire life and had never imagined she would see her grandson graduate from college. "Mijo is going to be an engineer," she whispered in Spanish to the woman next to her. "My grandson, the engineer." The ceremony began with speeches from university officials and the valedictorian. Jordan listened politely, but Maria could tell he was anxious for Anthony's name to be called. When the dean began reading names for the College of Engineering, Jordan sat up straighter in his seat. "Matthew Rodriguez," the dean announced, and a young man walked across the stage. Patricia Rodriguez came next, and Maria saw Jordan smile slightly, thinking of Dr. Patricia Williams, who had operated on Anthony 3 years ago. Then, finally, Anthony Miguel Rodriguez. Jordan started to applaud, then caught himself and clapped more quietly, not wanting to draw attention. But as Anthony walked across the stage, Jordan's emotions overwhelmed him. Tears streamed down his face as he watched the young man he had helped raise accept his diploma. Anthony paused at the podium after receiving his degree. The dean looked confused. Graduates were supposed to simply accept their diplomas and return to their seats. But Anthony had other plans. "Excuse me," Anthony said into the microphone, his voice carrying across the silent auditorium. "I'd like to say something if that's okay." The dean nodded uncertainly, and Anthony turned to face the audience of thousands. 15 years ago, I was a 9-year-old kid who thought I was stupid, Anthony began, his voice steady and clear. I lived in a neighborhood where people said kids like me would never amount to anything. I believed them. Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This wasn't what they had planned. Anthony was supposed to accept his diploma quietly and celebrate privately with his family afterward. Then I met someone who changed my life, Anthony continued. Not because cameras were watching, not for fame or publicity, but because he genuinely believed that every child deserves a chance to succeed. Maria felt Jordan tense beside her as she realized what Anthony was about to do. Mr. Michael Jordan, Anthony said, looking directly into the audience, you saved my life and the lives of hundreds of other kids in Chicago. You've been our teacher, our mentor, and our father figure for 15 years. The auditorium erupted in gasps and murmurs as people began turning in their seats, looking for Jordan. Cameras started flashing as reporters in the audience realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Jordan slowly removed his sunglasses, knowing there was no point in hiding anymore. Maria watched his face cycle through emotions: surprise, embarrassment, and finally acceptance. Anthony continued speaking, his voice growing stronger. You taught us that success isn't about what you achieve for yourself. It's about what you give back to others. You showed up for us every single morning, even when the world thought you were just a basketball player. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on Anthony's every word. This degree belongs to all of us, Anthony said, holding up his diploma. To every kid you helped with homework, every letter you helped us write, every time you believed in us when we couldn't believe in ourselves. Anthony looked directly at Jordan again. Would you please come up here, Mr. Mike? I want everyone to see the man who taught me that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going. The entire auditorium turned to look at Jordan. There was no escape now. Slowly, Jordan stood up and made his way down the aisle toward the stage. The crowd began applauding, softly at first, then louder as people realized what they were witnessing. Other graduates in the audience began standing and clapping. Some of them were crying. Maria realized that many of them probably came from similar backgrounds and understood exactly what Anthony's words meant. Jordan climbed the steps to the stage and embraced Anthony tightly. For a moment, the two men stood together, the world's most famous athlete and the young engineer he had helped raise, both of them crying without shame. I'm so proud of you, son, Jordan whispered into Anthony's ear, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. I couldn't have done it without you, Dad, Anthony replied, using the word he had never said before but had always felt. The auditorium exploded in applause. People were standing, cheering, and many were wiping away tears. Even the university officials on stage were clearly moved by what they had witnessed. Jordan took the microphone, his hands shaking slightly. I didn't come here to be celebrated, he said quietly. I came here to celebrate Anthony and all the other graduates who have worked so hard to earn their degrees. But the crowd wasn't going to let him deflect attention so easily. Someone in the audience shouted, "Thank you for caring about our kids." Others began calling out similar messages. Jordan looked overwhelmed by the response. Anthony is right about one thing, Jordan finally said into the microphone. Success means nothing if you don't use it to help others. These graduates and all the children like them are the real heroes. They're the ones who chose education over easier paths. They're the ones who refused to give up on their dreams. Jordan handed the microphone back to Anthony, but the ceremony had essentially stopped. Reporters were making phone calls, and the audience was still buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed. As Jordan and Anthony walked off the stage together, Maria saw university officials frantically discussing how to handle the media attention that was about to explode around this story. Within an hour, the video was being shown on every news channel in America. By evening, it had spread around the world. The story of Michael Jordan's secret 15-year commitment to helping underprivileged children became the biggest sports story of the year. But as Maria watched Jordan that evening, surrounded by reporters who wanted interviews and photographers who wanted pictures, she could see that he was worried about something else entirely. This changes everything, he said to her quietly, as they finally escaped the media chaos. Once this story is out there, it's going to affect the children and families I work with. Maria realized that Jordan wasn't concerned about his own privacy anymore. He was worried about how the sudden attention would impact the community center and the children who depended on it. The kids are going to be okay, she assured him. They know you'll protect them. Jordan looked at her with an expression of determination mixed with concern. I hope so, Maria. Because if this publicity hurts even one of those children, I'll never forgive myself. As they drove back to Chicago that night, neither of them could have imagined how dramatically their lives were about to change, or what the consequences would be for the hundreds of children who had come to depend on Jordan's quiet, consistent presence every morning at 8 a.m. Maria arrived at the Garfield Community Center the next morning to find chaos. News trucks lined the street. Reporters with cameras were trying to peer through windows. Photographers were taking pictures of anything they could see, including children walking to the center for the regular morning program. The peaceful sanctuary that Jordan had created over 15 years was under siege. Willie Johnson stood at the front door, his usual gentle demeanor replaced by fierce protectiveness. No media allowed, he told every reporter who approached. These are children, not news stories. But the damage was already being done. Maria watched through her car window as some parents turned around and walked away with their children rather than face the cameras. Others covered their kids' faces and hurried inside, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Jordan's Mercedes was nowhere to be seen. Maria checked her watch. 8:15 a.m. For the first time in 15 years, Michael Jordan was late for his morning appointment with the children. Inside the center, Maria found Mrs. Washington on the phone, her voice tired and strained. She was speaking with parents, trying to reassure them that their children's safety and privacy would be protected. No, Mrs. Martinez, she was saying. The reporters are not allowed inside the building. Yes, we understand your concerns about Sophia being photographed. Mrs. Washington hung up and looked at Maria with exhaustion in her eyes. We've had 23 phone calls since 6 a.m. Some parents are too scared to bring their children today. Others are worried that this publicity will somehow hurt their kids. Maria felt her heart sink. This was exactly what Jordan had been afraid of. His greatest fear wasn't that people would discover his secret, but that the discovery would somehow harm the children he was trying to protect. Where's Michael? Maria asked. He's at his lawyer's office trying to figure out how to handle this media storm. Mrs. Washington replied. But Maria, I'm worried about the children who are here. They don't understand why there are cameras outside or why their safe space suddenly feels dangerous. In the main room, Maria saw about 15 children sitting at the small tables, their usual morning energy replaced by confusion and anxiety. Many of them kept looking toward the windows where camera flashes were still going off. 8-year-old Sophia Martinez sat alone at a table, her breakfast untouched. She looked scared and slow, nothing like the confident little girl who had told Jordan she wanted to become a teacher. Where's Mr. Mike? Sophia asked when she saw Maria. Why are all those people outside? Maria knelt down next to Sophia's chair, searching for words that would comfort an 8-year-old who didn't understand why her safe place was suddenly surrounded by strangers. Mr. Mike had to take care of some grown-up business this morning, Maria said gently. But he'll be back. He would never abandon you kids. Are we in trouble? Asked Carlos, the boy who wrote letters to his father in prison. Did we do something wrong? No, sweetheart, Maria replied. You didn't do anything wrong. Some people just found out about all the good things that happen here, and now they want to tell everyone about it. But Maria could see that her explanations weren't enough. These children had learned to be wary of adult attention, especially from strangers. Many of them had been let down by adults before, and they were scared that this sudden chaos would somehow take away their morning sanctuary. Jordan finally arrived at 10:30 a.m., nearly 3 hours late. He looked tired and stressed as he made his way through the crowd of reporters, ignoring their shouted questions and camera flashes. Michael, how long have you been helping these kids? Is this why you came back to basketball? How much money have you donated? Jordan said nothing to the media, but Maria could see the anger in his eyes. Not anger at being discovered, but anger that the children were being affected by something that was supposed to be about helping them. Inside the center, Jordan went immediately to the children. He sat in his usual tiny plastic chair and gathered the kids around him. I know this morning has been scary and confusing, he said quietly. All those people outside are here because they found out that we have something special here. But I want you to know that nothing important is going to change. But what if our parents don't let us come anymore? Asked 9-year-old Marcus. My mom was really worried about the cameras. Jordan's expression grew serious. Marcus, I promise you that I will do everything in my power to make sure this stays a safe place for all of you. If that means I have to talk to every parent personally, I'll do that. If it means I have to make the reporters go away, I'll do that too. Maria watched Jordan with the children and saw him making a decision in real time. He was going to fight to preserve what they had built together, even if it meant stepping into the spotlight he had avoided for so many years. Over the next few days, the media attention grew even more intense. The story of Jordan's secret charity work was on every sports show, every news program, and the front page of newspapers around the world. Most of the coverage was positive. People were amazed by the scope of Jordan's commitment and the fact that he had kept it secret for so long. But there were also critics who questioned why he hadn't made his charitable work more public, and others who speculated about his motives. Jordan held his first press conference about the community center work on a Friday afternoon. Maria sat in the back of the room watching him face dozens of reporters and cameras. "I want to make something very clear," Jordan began, his voice firm and serious. "This press conference is not about celebrating me or what I've done. It's about protecting the children and families who have been affected by the recent media attention." He looked directly into the cameras. "These children are not props for a story. They are not symbols or statistics. They are real kids with real challenges, and they deserve to have their privacy and dignity respected." Jordan's tone grew even more serious. "Any reporter who tries to interview these children without permission, any photographer who takes pictures of them without consent, any media outlet that treats them as anything other than the precious young people they are, you will be hearing from my lawyers." Maria had never seen Jordan so protective or so determined. This was the competitive fire that made him great at basketball. But now he was using it to shield vulnerable children from unwanted attention. "From now on," Jordan continued, "all information about our programs will come through official channels. The children's privacy will be protected above all else. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can deal with me directly." The strategy worked. Most mainstream media outlets agreed to Jordan's terms, understanding that the story was more powerful if they respected the boundaries he set. The paparazzi and tabloid reporters gradually lost interest when they realized they couldn't get access to the children. More importantly, the parents began to trust that Jordan could protect their families from unwanted attention. Within 2 weeks, almost all the children had returned to their regular morning schedule. But Maria noticed something different about Jordan during this time. The stress of managing the media attention and protecting the children had taken a toll on him. He looked tired and older than his 35 years. "This isn't what I wanted," he told Maria one evening as they sat in his office. "I never wanted the spotlight on this work. But maybe it's for the best," Maria suggested gently. "Look at all the support that's pouring in. Other cities want to start similar programs. Businesses are offering to help fund the work." Jordan looked at her with surprise. "What support?" Mrs. Washington knocked on the office door, carrying a large box of mail. "This came today," she said, setting the box on Jordan's desk. "We've received over 5,000 letters in the past week." Jordan opened the box and began reading the letters. His expression slowly changed from surprise to amazement. "This is from a teacher in Detroit," he said, holding up one letter. "She wants to know how to start a program like ours in her school." He picked up another letter. "This one is from a business owner in Los Angeles. He wants to donate money to help us expand." Maria watched Jordan read letter after letter from people who had been inspired by his story. Teachers, social workers, business leaders, and ordinary citizens who wanted to help children in their own communities. "Maybe you're right," Jordan said quietly. "Maybe keeping this secret wasn't the only way to help kids. Maybe sharing it can help even more children." Mrs. Washington smiled. "Michael, in 30 years of social work, I've learned that sometimes the best way to protect something precious is to share it with people who will value it as much as you do." Jordan spent the rest of the evening reading letters and making notes. Maria could see his mind working, planning how to turn this unexpected publicity into something that could help children nationwide. "Maria," he said as she prepared to leave for the day, "I think it's time to make this bigger than just Chicago. Much bigger." "What do you have in mind?" she asked. Jordan looked at her with the same intensity he had shown during championship runs, but now it was directed toward a different kind of victory. "I want to make sure that in every major city in America, there's a child getting help with homework at 8 a.m., just like these kids do. I want to create a network of programs so strong that no child has to face their challenges alone." Maria smiled. realizing that Jordan's secret being exposed hadn't destroyed his mission. It had simply given him the platform to make it even more powerful. "When do we start?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning," Jordan replied. "At 8 a.m., just like always." April 16, 2003. Michael Jordan had played his final NBA game with the Washington Wizards just one day earlier. At 40 years old, the greatest basketball player in history was hanging up his jersey for the last time. Sports reporters were calling it the end of an era, but Maria Santos knew better. As she drove through the familiar streets of Chicago's South Side at 7:45 a.m., she understood that Jordan's most important era was just beginning. The Garfield Community Center looked the same as it had 20 years ago when Jordan first discovered it. The same brick building, the same hand-painted sign, the same worn steps where children had walked every morning for 2 decades. But everything else had changed in ways that would have amazed that grieving young man who first pulled over here in 1994. Jordan's Mercedes was already in the parking lot. Some things never changed, no matter how famous he became or how many lives he touched. At exactly 8 a.m., he would be inside with the children, just like he had been for 3,287 mornings over the past 20 years. Inside, Maria found the familiar scene that had become the most important hour of Jordan's day. 30 children sat at small tables, eating breakfast and working on homework. But these weren't the same children Jordan had met. Those original kids were now adults, teachers, nurses, engineers, and business owners scattered across the country, all carrying forward the lessons they had learned in this room. Today's children didn't know Jordan as a basketball legend. To 8-year-old Maya Rodriguez, he was simply Mr. Mike, the tall man who helped her with math problems and listened when she talked about missing her deployed father. "Mr. Mike, I can't figure out this multiplication," Maya said, holding up her homework with frustration. Jordan folded his massive frame into the tiny plastic chair beside her, just as he had done thousands of times before. "Let's work through it together, sweetheart. Remember what I always tell you? Mistakes are just practice for getting better," Maya recited with a smile. Maria watched this interaction with tears in her eyes. She had witnessed Jordan win 6 NBA championships. But nothing had ever moved her more than seeing him patiently help a struggling child understand that 7 times 8 equals. Mrs. Washington, now in her 70s but still running the center with energy and wisdom, joined Maria by the window. 20 years, she said quietly. "Can you believe it's been 20 years since that angry, grieving young man walked through our door?" The James R. Jordan Foundation, named after Michael's father, now operated programs in 43 cities across America. Over 12,000 children had graduated from their programs. The foundation had provided college scholarships to 847 students, funded after-school programs in 56 schools, and created job training centers in dozens of communities. But for all the growth and expansion, the heart of everything remained the same. Michael Jordan, sitting in a child-sized chair at 8 a.m., helping kids believe in themselves. "Look at this," Mrs. Washington said, showing Maria a letter that had arrived that morning. "It's from Dr. Anthony Rodriguez." Maria smiled as she read the letter. Anthony, now 35 years old and a successful civil engineer, had written from Seattle, where he was designing bridges and mentoring at-risk youth in his spare time. "Dear Mr. Mike," the letter began. "Today marks 20 years since you first helped me with my homework. I wanted you to know that I'm teaching my own children the lessons you taught me. Work hard, be kind, and never give up on your dreams." The letter continued. "My daughter Maria, yes, I named her after your wonderful assistant, asks me every day about the man who helped her daddy become an engineer. I tell her about the mornings we spent writing letters, learning math, and discovering that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going." Maria wiped her eyes as she finished reading. The ripple effects of Jordan's morning ritual had spread far beyond anything he could have imagined. "There's more," Mrs. Washington said, pulling out a thick folder. "We received updates from 67 of our former students this month. Keisha Williams just opened her 3rd medical clinic. Deshaun Thompson's auto repair business now employs 22 people. Tiffany Martinez finished her master's degree in social work and runs programs for homeless children in Phoenix." Jordan looked up from where he was helping Maya with her math. "Did someone say Tiffany finished her master's? That's wonderful news." His genuine joy at hearing about his kids succeeding was the same as it had been 20 years ago. Fame and fortune hadn't changed the part of Jordan that mattered most. his heart for children who needed someone to believe in them. After the children left for school, Jordan sat quietly in the empty room. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating walls covered with 20 years of children's artwork, thank you letters, and photographs from graduations. "Do you ever regret it?" Maria asked. "Giving up so much time and money for this work when you could have been focused on other things?" Jordan considered the question carefully, picking up one of the original letters from 1994, a note from a child to his deceased grandmother. He had kept it all these years as a reminder of why the work mattered. "Maria, I made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I won every championship and award basketball had to offer. But none of that filled the emptiness I felt after my father died." He gestured around the room where so many important conversations had taken place. "This work, these children, they taught me what my father was trying to show me all along. Success isn't about what you achieve for yourself. It's about how many people you lift up along the way." Jordan stood up and walked to the letter-writing corner, where hundreds of children had poured their hearts onto paper over the years. "Every morning for 20 years I've learned something new from these kids. They've taught me about courage in the face of impossible odds, about hope when everything seems dark, about the power of believing in tomorrow." "What happens now?" Maria asked. "With basketball behind you, will you spend more time here?" Jordan smiled with an expression of pure contentment. "Maria, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Basketball made me famous, but this work made me whole. Now I want to spend whatever time I have left making sure programs like this exist in every community that needs them." He pulled out a notebook, filled with his plans for expanding the foundation. "I want to open 50 new centers in the next 5 years. I want to create a teacher training program so other people can learn to work with at-risk children. I want to make sure that long after I'm gone, children are still getting help at 8 a.m. every morning." Mrs. Washington joined them, carrying a box of new applications from cities wanting to start their own programs. "Michael, we've received requests from over 200 communities this year. Your story has inspired people all across the country to want to help children in their own neighborhoods." Jordan looked through the applications with the same intensity he had once brought to studying game film. "How do we help all of them?" "One child at a time," Maria replied, echoing words she had heard Jordan say countless times over the years. "The same way we always have." As they prepared to leave the center, Jordan did what he had done every morning for 20 years. He walked through each room, straightening chairs, organizing supplies, and making sure everything was perfect for the next day's children. "Same time tomorrow?" Maria asked, though she already knew the answer. 8 a.m., Jordan confirmed with a smile. Just like always, they walked out together into the Chicago morning. The city had changed dramatically since 1994, but the most important work happened in quiet moments that the world rarely noticed. As Jordan drove away, Maria watched until his car disappeared around the corner. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp, he would be back. Because some commitments transcend fame, outlast careers, and matter more than any game ever played. The secret that had amazed fans when it was finally revealed wasn't really about Jordan's charity work or even his incredible generosity. The secret was simpler and more profound. Michael Jordan had discovered that his greatest victories happened not when he defeated opponents, but when he helped children win at life. 20 years of 8 a.m. mornings had taught him that true greatness isn't measured by championships or records. It's measured by how many lives you touch, how many dreams you help come true, and how much hope you leave behind. And in a small community center on Chicago's South Side, that legacy would continue every morning at 8 a.m., long after the final buzzer of Michael Jordan's basketball career had sounded. We'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let us know what city or country you're in. It's amazing how stories like this connect people from all around the world. If this story moved you and opened your eyes to a side of Michael Jordan you never knew existed, please hit that like button. It really helps us share these inspiring stories with more people who need to hear them. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will surprise you, inspire you, and remind you that there's always more to people than meets the eye. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. Stories like Michael Jordan's remind us that real greatness comes from lifting others up. And by sharing this video, you're helping spread that message of kindness and hope to even more people who might need to hear it today. Thanks for listening. And remember, sometimes the most powerful victories happen when nobody's watching. See you in the next story.